Yesterday, the evangelical apologist Frank Turek posted the following tweet with a video embedded saying, Richard Dawkins takes his best shot at proving macroevolution. How does it hold up? Watch as Frank responds to Dawkins' claims. So then I retweeted that and posed a question and made a statement. And I'll just preface this by saying that my tweet has a typo. It says Oxturd instead of Oxford. For some reason, Twitter has this ability to make it impossible to see typos until you've posted the tweet, and somebody should study why that is. But leave that aside. I'm going to read my tweet now without the typo. So I say, world famous Oxford trained evolutionary biologist versus pop apologist with a Doctor of Ministry degree. Who will win? I admit that's a little bit cheeky, but I think not inappropriately so. I'm raising some pretty important issues here. Unfortunately, people who are already biased toward Frank Turek, many of them won't probably be able to see that and understand the point that I'm making. Case in point, somebody responded and alleged that I'd committed two informal logical fallacies. This individual said, that's a nice genetic fallacy, an argument from authority you have going there. I'd like to respond to that allegation that I've committed two fallacies and then get into the weeds of what I'm actually saying and why it's not a fallacy. So, first of all, let's give a definition for the genetic fallacy. Now, this one, both of these are going to come from Wikipedia, which is a decent starting point here for definitions. So, the genetic fallacy is a fallacy of irrelevance in which arguments or information are dismissed or validated based solely on their source of origin rather than their content. In other words, a claim is ignored or given credibility based on its source rather than the claim itself. So, what would be an example of genetic fallacy? I live in Edmonton. We're fans of the Edmonton Oilers. We're very competitive with Calgary, where you have another hockey team, the Calgary Flames. So, if somebody made some analysis about hockey, and I said, "Oh yeah, but they're a Flames fan," that would be an example, arguably, of a genetic fallacy that you're dismissing them just because they happen to be fans of another team without considering the merits of their analysis of the game itself on its own terms. The fact that they are a fan of the other team is just not a relevant factor, so it's a genetic fallacy. Now, the argument from authority is a form of argument in which the opinion of an authority figure is used as evidence to support an argument. So this is sort of a blind deference to authority, which can also be a fallacy. And this person, I guess, is alleging that I am engaging in both of these fallacies. And I think that that's just flatly incorrect and a failure to understand the point that I am making. I'd like to talk here for a moment in response to the tweet by appealing to Stephen Cherry Miller's book, Why Brilliant People Believe Nonsense. And at one point, Steve Miller makes the following comments. He says, I often read comments on blog posts or articles or Facebook discussions which accuse the writer of committing a specific logical fallacy and then declaring the argument thoroughly debunked, typically with an air of arrogant finality. While the debunker may feel quite smug, intelligent participants consider him quite sophomoric. In reality, he's typically failed to even remotely understand the argument, much less apply the fallacy in a way that's relevant to the discussion. Surely this fallacy deserves a proper name and could be listed with other fallacies. Thus, I'll define the fallacy as improperly connecting a fallacy with an argument so that the argument is erroneously presumed to be debunked. Now, the one thing I want to say here is I'm not endorsing all of the things Frank says, Frank, in this case, Steve says in the first paragraph about arrogance and so on and smugness to the person who critiqued me. I am simply saying that I do think that this person has committed the fallacy by errantly applying two fallacies to my argument, my implicit argument and critique of Frank Turek in my original tweet. So, what is my original argument? I can give it to you with a simple illustration. Let's say that you have, and I hope this never happens to you, but let's say that you are diagnosed with cancer and you have to decide what are your treatment options for the cancer. And you have two different comparative authorities that you consider consulting, and they offer completely different approaches to dealing with the cancer. The first person is your personal trainer who has a bachelor of arts and kinesiology and a popular YouTube channel on healthy living. And he has his thoughts about how you should address the cancer. The other person is the head of oncology at insert name of world-renowned university hospital here. And my question is, between those two, the personal trainer or the head of oncology at a world-famous university hospital, which person is going to be more likely to have information on how to treat cancer? And I think it's pretty clear what the answer is. It's going to be the head of oncology. We're in a very similar situation when we're talking about evolutionary biology. And in this case, the two individuals, one of them is a pop evangelical apologist who was trained at a seminary, has a doctor of ministry degree with no formal training in biology at all, versus a world renowned Oxford trained biologist who has written many university papers, done research, written multiple books in the field of study in question, biology. Now, both Dawkins, one thing to keep in mind here, both Dawkins and Turek have biases. Dawkins clearly is an atheist who believes that evolution in some ways is incompatible with theism or makes theism less credible. He famously said, or infamously said in The Blind Watchmaker back in 1986, that evolution made it possible to be an intellectually fulfilled atheist. So he has his biases. There's no question. But so does Frank Turek. Frank Turek believes there is deep inconsistency between biology or between evolutionary biology and his account of creation as he understands it in the Bible as a Southern Baptist trained pop conservative evangelical apologist. They both have their biases. The question is, which of them is more likely to have informed opinions about evolutionary biology or about biology generally? And there's no question there. Just as the head of oncology is far more informed than your personal trainer on how to treat cancer, so the Oxford trained, universally known and respected biologist is going to be more informed on biology, matters of biology, including evolution, than the top evangelical apologist who was trained in a doctor of ministry degree at a seminary. There's just no question here. This is not about a genetic fallacy. It's not about a blind appeal to authority. Rather, it is about the reasoned assessment of credibility between various respective parties, where you look for things like credentialing and evidence that that person has an informed opinion on the subject matter. And the interesting thing is we can do this in regular life. Most of us are pretty good at deciding between the guy standing on the street corner with a sandwich board that says the end of the world is nigh and his shouting his opinions at every passerby versus somebody who's like trained in a university to get their various opinions on X or Y or Z. We can discern who is the more credible authority. And yet sometimes when people come to their own biases with respect to their particular beliefs, they then just can't understand or appreciate any critique of it, and they're going to come up with the fallacy. And I think that's what we have going on here. So it's not an issue about about blind adherence to authority. It's quite the opposite. It's the fact that you have to consider the credibility of various authorities by looking at their credentialing. And that's all that we're doing here. It's common sense.